Hey, everybody. A little bit cooler up here in Flagstaff. Finally, I got a little bit of reprieve from some of the heat that was down in the valley that we had to face. And so wanted to come to you again this week, even though it's been a very busy week, and give you something that, I was really thinking about. A lot of times when I'm driving to different places to either speak or do some of the things that I have to do as a retired chief and some of the jobs that I have to do still in the ministry with Law Enforcement Leadership Ministry and the training company team, Tactical Education and Mentoring. There's times that you get to think, I love to drive to the places that I go. And it gives me time to just really think about things that are happening, leadership lessons to be learned. But I also fly to quite a few places as well. And I try to spend time on the plane with my computer and my Bible, just simply looking for things that I may have read before, but God gives me kind of a different meaning or understanding of that particular leadership um, thought that I want to do. And I kind of got to the point where I was saying, there's some times in our life that we go through some very difficult times and some tough times in our lives, and especially as leaders. And, one of the things that I talked about was, sometimes things end. And so there were some things that we were doing over the last couple of years that have come to a close. And sometimes that can be a little bit scary at times because, especially when that involves paying your bills and finances that come into your ministry. And that was kind of the case. And we have a tendency, even though scripture says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, what you shall eat, what you shall drink. Tomorrow will take care of itself. And that's when you really have to sit back and know that God is in control and you have to walk by faith. And sometimes that is very difficult to do. And I want to kind of give you just a quick principle of leading in the tough times. When things aren't going right, it's easier. I knew that in law enforcement, when things were going really well, and people were saying, "Oh, you're doing a great job, doing a great job. The department's doing great. Oh, look what you've done." Those are great times to lead because people will pat you on the back. People will admonish you that you're doing a good job. People will tell you that everything that's going on is really, really, really good. But boy, there's times in your leadership life where you go through hell and high water, and it is difficult to stay the course. Sometimes we just want to throw in the towel. Sometimes we want to quit, although it's always too early to quit because we know that God has a particular plan, even though we're going through the valley. Although we may not be going through the valley of the shadow of death, but we're going through very difficult times where our companies or our departments or the things that God has called us to do in ministries gets to be a struggle at times. And I'm of the opinion of this one. You know what? I put this out on Instagram and YouTube. You guys know that. I don't care how many followers I get. I'm not after the push of a button. I watch so many things on Instagram and YouTube, and they say things like, hit the like and subscribe, and it helps the algorithms. Listen, folks, this is about giving good leadership advice from a biblical perspective. I don't care really who likes it or doesn't like it. I mean, I do care who does, and I hope that it reaches people. But I'm not doing this simply because I need people to click a like button on my YouTube channel or my Instagram or follow me. In fact, my account on Instagram is pretty protected simply because, obviously, being a chief, there are people that don't like what we do or what we stand for. There are people that are Christians and they put stuff out on Instagram and YouTube, and there are people that certainly don't like them either. You know what? Those things, they don't bother me. But I kind of want to give you this little leadership lesson, and I'm going to sum up the book of Job for you. Leading in tough times. Now, let me kind of give you the 36,000-foot view of Job's life. Job is very successful leader family, very well respected. And Satan's roving the earth looking for somebody to test and tempt, and he comes to God. Satan comes to God and says, I've been throughout the entire earth. I can't find anybody. And God says, have you considered Job? And Job says, listen, God, you've protected him. And so I'm not going to, you know, do what I need to do simply because you've put a hedge around him, you protected him. And God says, no, you go ahead and do it. You can go ahead and you can test him, but you can't touch him. You can wipe out everything, but you can't touch him. And that's what happens. Can you imagine being the leader of your family, leader of your community, and all of a sudden your livestock's gone, your livelihood is basically gone, wiped out, because God allowed Satan to take that from him. And scripture is very interesting when it says that even in that, Job didn't sin. Now, my curiosity always always piques my interest to say, boy, those are tough times. When you lose everything, man, the first thing that we sometimes want to do is go have a pity party, or we want to go crawl in a corner and just hide. But Job didn't sin. And so Job continues the path, and Satan comes to God a second time and says, I've been throughout the world, can't find anybody. And he says, have you considered my servant Job? And he said, well, yeah, you let me do this the first time, but you didn't let me touch him. God says this, go ahead, you can touch him, but you can't kill him. And so now we get to the point where not only is that, Job is in very miserable shape. And you know what? Scripture says this, that he doesn't sin. So can you imagine not only losing everything that you own, but literally almost losing your life, and not take it out on God, not sin, not grumble or complain? Now let me give you kind of the leadership principle of this. Job's wife come to him and says, what are you putting up with all of, are you still holding on to your integrity? When we talk about values in law enforcement, and we talk about values in our personal lives as Christians, integrity is a word that always comes up. Maintaining your character and your integrity. Those are two very important qualities of leaders. Character. Character is who you really are. Character is who you are in the dark. Character is who you are when you look in the mirror. It also says don't run with the people that can disrupt that character. Bad company corrupts good character, Corinthians. But Job's wife says, you still holding on your integrity? Curse God and die. Job says, listen, I'm not going to do that. Do we accept good from God? Yeah. Do we accept bad from God? Yeah. There's times in our life when things go the wrong direction. And man, it is tough on times. And sometimes it's very difficult on your life. But God always has something at the end of that road that will bless you. Now, be careful, because Job had 3 really good friends. So he's going through this, and his friends are not helping him out. Listen, when you go through the tough times in leadership, who is it that you migrate to? A lot of times we go right to our friends. Job was certainly in that category. Man, I'm going through this. Man, they don't like me anymore. I've lost this. They seem to be turning against me. Man, do I need to quit my job? What is it that I need to do? You know what? Those are the easy things to do. The tough things to do is stay where you're at. And sometimes not listen to the people that you trust the most, because they're not giving you great advice. Thus the reason why the book of Proverbs exists. Why it's probably my favorite book. But Job gets to this position to where his friends aren't helping him. Finally, he gets to the point where he says, wait a minute, I'm not going to put up with this stuff any longer. He comes to his senses. And he gets to the very backside of Job in the 42nd chapter, and watch what happens. Because of his integrity and his faithfulness to God, God restores twice as much as Job started with. So before Satan even wiped out everything, God gave him twice as much as what he had. And I want to encourage you that sometimes you're going to go through those leadership lessons in life where things aren't going to go so well. They're going to be tough times. And it's not time to cave. Listen, in those tough times, here's what great leaders do. They stay the course. They understand that at the end of that road, the end of that tough time, God has a reward waiting for those. Sometimes it might cost you your life. I mean, we just went through some very difficult times, obviously down in Texas with, the Mystic Camp and all of the girls that were lost and the flooding that came. And you know what? We can turn around and point blame and everything else. For those parents that lost kids in that flood, that is devastating. You know what? We don't understand those things. And sometimes we even question God, and sometimes God doesn't answer and he's silent. And we just have to know that if they were believers, then they're in heaven. They are angels that God needed, and we just need to know that God is still in control, as difficult as it may be. But as leaders, no matter whether it's leaders in our families, leaders in our law enforcement, leaders in a department, leaders at work, no matter where we're leading, understand that the tough times, great leaders understand that there's something on the backside that will benefit them, and it will be productive because God will give it back if you're faithful. And so this really is just a word of encouragement. If you're going through a difficult time as a leader, think about this. On the backside of it, God's got something planned for your life. And I come back to Jeremiah 29:11 all the time. God knows the plans he has for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. And you might say, well, God harmed? No, God allowed harm to come, but God was not the author of the harm. And so you as a leader need to understand that when those things come, when those problems come, when things aren't looking good, when there's harm, it is not God. And people turn around and blame God all the time for that. Why would a loving God do so? God doesn't violate our freedom to choose. He does not violate our will. We have a free will, and the greatest power that you possess, and I've said it on many occasions, is the power to choose. And you can choose during the harmful sessions and during the tough times of your leadership. You can choose to be upbeat and confident that once you get through it, God has something waiting on the backside for you. So I want to encourage you. You're going through a tough time in your leadership. I want to encourage you. God has something greater for you on the backside. He will give you twice as much, because listen to this. God is not a respecter of persons. If he does it in Job's life, he'll do it in your life. You just have to be patient sometimes and wait for God to do what God needs to do. Hope that encouraged you. God bless you. I'll see you next week.